What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome to the Underdog Drafter Party. I'm Jake, here with my co-host, one of the best football writers around, Ryan Heath. Me and Ryan will be drafting some Battle Royale teams tonight, talking about our favorite scroll down options, top values, contest-specific strategy. We can also answer any pressing questions you guys have on Week 7. Ryan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm feeling great about this slate. Yeah, it's pretty rare. I feel as high confidence on a Friday night as I do tonight. So we'll see how that turns out for us this weekend.
Yeah, I also feel pretty good about the slate, and generally that either means I'm gonna make a ton of money or get absolutely crushed. So I'm very excited for that this weekend. Nothing better than gambling on a little bit of football. We'll dive into the ranks here, and then we'll talk about some contests. We'll draft some teams, and generally during the drafts is when we can get to any pressing questions in the chat. But we will start with quarterback this week. Things look relatively flat. I think there are some scroll down options I'm intrigued by, but at least among the top 3 quarterbacks, I'm a little down on Allen. I straight up prefer Hurts, but I think, honestly, I think you could make an argument that you could take Jaden Daniels even a pick or two ahead of ADP, and I'm generally not very willing to take quarterbacks super early, but Jaden Daniels just projects so well for us this week. Obviously, it's a great matchup. Ryan, what are your thoughts on quarterbacks, some of these early round guys, and then I imagine you're a bit like me and you really like our boy Sam Darnold as a scroll down option.
Yeah, kind of like you, no real interest in Josh Allen. I'm not really into Hurts either. Just the Giants get a lot of pressure. Hurts is very bad against pressure. I don't know. Just seems more like a Saquon Barkley game to me. Daniels is tricky, so I acknowledge he projects really well. I'm a little scared that the median outcome of this game is just kind of nobody posts a slate breaking score. Like the Commanders just crush the Panthers, and none of his receivers get there. The touchdowns get split up between him and Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. Like there's no spot here where I'm really excited to go. I'm taking some Daniels. But I think it's required to use a bring back just to make sure that the game environment gets to where we would want it to be. So I think you have to pair him with a Chuba, with a Deontay, who is looking very questionable though. That's a little bit rough. Further down, I'm all about the Joe Burrow stacks this week. I think Stroud doubles are fine. But this is one of the best weeks to get weird at quarterback. So absolutely love the Sam Darnold stuff. We might talk about ways to get a little bit different with him, aside from just singling with Jefferson, which is good, by the way. Not saying you can't single him with Jefferson. I also like the other side of that game. The Jared Goff doubles are pretty easy to build and feel very nice. Cousins and Geno, I'm a bit down on this game environment. I had a pretty detailed write-up in advanced matchups. But basically, I'm a little concerned that the Seahawks don't want to be as pass-heavy as they were through the first month or so of the season, and that if this is like a close game, that they won't necessarily be pushing the pace. So a little bit down on the game. That could be more of a main slate call, though, where it's actually going to have ownership. Like I think just structurally here makes all the sense in the world to play like Kirk Cousins doubles or even Geno doubles. So not saying it's terrible. I just really prefer the Darnold Goff stuff. And I'll leave a light on for Brock Purdy as well. He projects really well in our stuff. I'm not like crazy about the game environment, but I do think the 49ers could be forced to throw a lot here. 12 viable quarterbacks. That's how deep I'm willing to go this week. So should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these are the most fun weeks when we do have a lot of really great scroll down options at quarterback. And I did want to second what you said about Jaden Daniels, where he projects really well. We have him for 24 Underdog fantasy points. Jalen Hurts, the next closest quarterback, at just 20.5. So that is a pretty significant projection gap. The matchup is awesome, but Carolina doesn't generate a lot of pressure. That does tend to prevent Jaden Daniels from scrambling, and we know those scrambles are worth a ton of fantasy points. And like Ryan said, we really aren't sure Carolina can really push Washington here. I don't know if I'd go as far to say as the bring back is required, but I definitely would prioritize a guy like Chuba Hubbard on Jaden Daniels teams, because if Carolina can show up here, maybe Chuba has a great game, multiple touchdowns, they keep it competitive. That's really what's going to be that pushes Daniels to a tournament winning score. But given that all these top guys have at least some reasonable path to failure, I think it makes it a really, really juicy week to scroll down. Guys like Darnold, Cousins, Goff, Purdy, all really strong guys that I want to have in my lineups across the board. Moving on to running back here, we have, I think, a pretty easy top two in Kyron Williams and Saquon Barkley. They both feel like really great plays to me. I absolutely love Kenneth Walker, in part because, you already highlighted the matchup isn't great for Geno. Kenneth Walker's volume has been elite through the air and on the ground. So he can pretty easily get you there regardless of game script. He's one of my favorite plays of the week in both DFS and Battle Royale. And, as Ryan mentioned, Seattle might want to go a little bit more run heavy here. Ryan, beyond those top three guys, who else stands out to you here at running back?
Yeah, so there's some really good value here. So Hubbard projects incredibly well, almost as well as Ken Walker, or we might have them even or close to even in our projections. So that I'm getting a lot of Hubbard. Yeah, I kind of poo-pooed on the Jaden Daniels play earlier, but it's not like it's that big of an ask for me to draft Hubbard. So I will be doing some of that. Pollard also projects as a really, really strong value for us. You're not getting a huge ownership discount with him, but I just really like the matchup here. I like that it's going to be harder to get him on the main slate because of what the ownership will be there. So if I can get my Tony Pollard exposure going into a game environment where he is the only running back that's going to see legitimate playing time. The Bills have gotten absolutely killed through the air against running backs this season. So even if the Titans are chasing points, I think that's totally fine, and that Pollard can get there either way. So going to have a lot of Pollard. And then I would say that I think we have two of the best running back scroll downs of the season on this slate. And the two guys I want to highlight there are Devon Achane. That should need no introduction against the Colts. Huge run funnel defense. We have seen what Devon Achane can do plenty over the last couple of years, can absolutely post a slate winning Barry U type of score, is going to have a significant ownership discount, going to be scrolling down to make sure I get to him. And then the other guy I really like here is James Cook. So the Bills are favored by, I think it just came down to 8.5 points, but they're favored by a lot. And James Cook averages 22 fantasy points per game when the Bills win by 7 or more points since Joe Brady took over. Obviously, if Ray Davis gets ruled out, this play becomes a lot better. But either way, I think I'm fine kind of using him as a scroll down and mixing him in there, because I just think there is also slate winning upside with Cook in that specific game script scenario. Would not have him and Pollard on the same team necessarily. That feels a little, you're just kind of asking to thread a needle, a very specific needle there. But aside from that, happy to take a lot of Cook as well.
Yeah, generally speaking, you want to avoid two running backs in the same game on the same fantasy team, whether that's DFS or Battle Royale. But I really love those scroll down shouts. James Cook, the price is a little awkward in DFS, so I do think I'd rather get my exposure here. Devon Achane, could easily break the slate. Miami was pretty damn efficient running the ball in week 5. They had almost 200 team rushing yards. Obviously, as Ryan pointed out, we know what Achane can do. I also wanted to highlight Aaron Jones as a potential scroll down. Obviously, there's a little bit of, still a bit of a question as to whether or not he will play, but in his healthy games, 19.5 expected fantasy points. That leads all running backs over the full season. Also an 18% target share. That's behind only Alvin Kamara. So Aaron Jones is a part of either Sam Darnold teams or just as a scroll down option if maybe you drafted all chalk, I think is certainly pretty strong. But yeah, there are a lot of really good running back options on this slate. A lot of guys that you can get in round 6 that project really, really well. Let's move on to wide receiver here. Ryan, to me, Justin Jefferson is the clear 101. Part of that is because, I just absolutely love this game environment. Ryan, you told me last night, Minnesota has only trailed on one drive all season. I mean, that is absolutely insane. Detroit is, they're Minnesota's favored here by 1.5, but Detroit is a team that can absolutely push the Vikings. We really haven't seen that this season. It's also a really strong schedule adjusted on paper matchup for Justin Jefferson. Anything to add on Jefferson, and who else do you like in these early rounds?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of everything for Justin Jefferson looks amazing. Just the schematic stuff against man coverage is absolutely insane. I think it's close to like a 45% target share against man coverage for Jefferson. So yeah, clear 101. One of those weeks, I'm hoping I get a lot of 101s. Yeah. Outside of him, I do think so. I think this goes 5 deep, where any of these first 5 receivers by ADP can post a sleep winning score. So if I can get multiple on a team, or if one is falling, then I'm like changing my plan for that draft and just taking them and trying to get those combinations. But after that, just build your stacks, man. That's kind of where I'm at. Like McLaurin is fine, London is fine, but again, those are pieces I would want to include them in stacks, but I'm not like extremely excited to get like a naked DK Metcalf or a naked Stephon Diggs or anything like that. I just think receiver really kind of dies after that top 5 in terms of what gets me excited. Cooper Kupp projects as a pretty good value, but is looking like a true game time decision. I think it's fine if you just want to either take him in the last round only or wait until Sunday morning to get your exposure there. And the scroll downs at receiver are just underwhelming to me. So like T. Higgins pops in our stuff. I like that in any Burrow doubles, obviously. Jordan Addison, Jameson Williams, if you're stacking up that game, I think that's totally fine to use them to get a little bit different there. But yeah, other than that, I'm just not all that interested at receiver this week. So that's probably the position I'm prioritizing most early on in drafts.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a really, really strong week for early round wide receivers. I certainly, I don't know. I might put Drake London into that top 5 category. I mean, his volume has been so good, but obviously prefer, guys like Neighbors, Amon-Ra, Chase ahead of London. But I do think you could argue for him. Once you get to a guy like Terry McLaurin, though, then all of a sudden, I mean, McLaurin, especially according to our stuff, is pretty clearly going overdrafted. I think a lot of people just love grabbing the Daniels McLaurin stack, and I'm not necessarily sure that's the best path this week. Tight end, I think, is really straightforward. These top 3 tight ends are all really great plays, and then I like David Njoku as long as you can get him in the 6th round, and I really don't have much interest in any of these other guys. Ryan, what are your tight end thoughts?
You pretty much just nailed it. Yeah, that's kind of it. I'd draft them in the order we have ranked. It really is just I'm kind of indifferent between the 3 of them, honestly. I guess I like Bowers the most by a touch. Njoku in the 6th round feels fine. And I don't know. I took Zach Ertz on like one Jaden Daniels team just because I do that every week. It hasn't paid off yet. But yeah, that's kind of all I'm interested in at tight end this week. Yeah, get out of here with the Dalton Kincaid and the Sam Laporta stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Tucker Kraft has basically the exact same projection, actually projects significantly better than Kincaid in our stuff. Same exact projection, pretty much as Sam Laporta. So yeah, I think if those top 3 are off the board and Njoku's off the board, then I'd be looking at, maybe a guy like Kraft, a guy like Parkinson, maybe even Kyle Pitts if I wanted to build a Kirk Cousins team, but that's probably more of a 12 person draft take than a 6-person draft take. Yeah, tight end. Very, very straightforward this week. All right, let's get into these contests here. So generally just do kind of a quick overview of contests, what I like, what I don't like, whatever. Same thing I say every week. Dog Bowl, very, very high rake. These qualifiers are extremely punishing from a variance perspective. So, if you're on a limited budget, which I imagine most of us are, either watching this show or drafting, I would just entirely avoid the dog bowl unless you really want to go to Dallas and, have that social experience. Then you can throw some entries in there. But generally my advice is to avoid the dog bowl. Main battle royale, I think is totally fine. The payout structure is a bit more punishing from a variance perspective than something like the Wildcat, which is, if you're going to draft a lot of teams, the Wildcat is by far my favorite contest. Only pays out the top 10%. Something like the Battle Royale pays out the top 20%. But, what you get in exchange for giving up those, that 10% extra worth of payouts for, those top finishes is you get a lot better payouts at the top end of the tournament. Oh, I can't. Doesn't look like I can scroll down here because I'm too zoomed in. But you have a 1% finish, top 0.1% finish in the Wildcat. You're going to get rewarded a lot better than you would in the main battle royale. Unless of course you finish first in the main BR. I've always really enjoyed, these smaller field single entry tournaments, whether it's the bomb, the flea flicker, fullback dive. Those are all great because in these smaller field tournaments, you can correlate a lot heavier. So if you're ever looking to grab double stacks, I generally prefer to do that in smaller field tournaments than I would in something like the Wildcat or the main battle royale. And then beyond that, I think it's all pretty straightforward. I think the Deposit Kingdom Weekly League is another great tournament because it's just a smaller field contest where, again, you can, up your correlation a little bit. Maybe we'll try to get into a squib kick to show some 12-team drafts tonight. And I think that roughly wraps it up for contests. So Ryan, we can start off with a Wildcat draft here. And while this waits to fill, did have a couple housekeeping items I wanted to get out of the way before we answer some questions. Guys, Fantasy Points Discord is a great place to hang out. And while most of the top channels in there are paywalled, you need a subscription to get in. The Underdog Battle Royale channel, where me and Ryan will drop our rankings, give Battle Royale advice, it's totally free. So really no excuse not to hop in the Fantasy Points Discord and hang out with us in the Battle Royale channel. We actually dropped our rankings in there earlier today. We'll have some more adjustments and drop more of a finalized ranking CSV that you can just upload straight into Underdog tomorrow. Roughly around noon, I'd say on Saturday is generally when I drop that in there. So certainly worth checking out. And then some of you guys may also be wondering why you can see like my exposures, game totals, spreads, weather on the screen right here. It's because we have a fantastic overlay tool from bestballoverlay.com that displays all this information. You can see your exposures while you're drafting. You can also see combinatorial exposures, which you'll see on the screen once we start drafting here. But it's a really, really useful tool. I've talked to the guys that created the tool. They're really great guys. They're determined to make a great tool, and you can save $10 a month with promo code PARTY on the Best Ball Overlay tool. So I certainly think that is worth checking out. Ryan, we drew the 4 spot here. I think we can get to a couple questions before it is time to pick. We had someone ask what we are doing with Cooper Kupp. To me, he's pretty much a 6th round pick when I can get him. And outside of that, I don't know. I not a guy I'd want to reach for. I'm not really grabbing like game stacks here. Anything to add on Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Like there's a chance he's limited, but obviously he's Cooper Kupp. So yeah, I don't know. I've never thought that closing line value is like a huge deal in Battle Royale. So even if he's being drafted in like the 2nd round or the 3rd round comes Sunday morning, if we find out he's in, I think I'm just okay with that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't think you want to give up too much pick equity to grab Kupp right now. Ryan, should we go Neighbors or Kenny Walker here to start off this build?
Let's go Neighbors. I just kind of like we were talking about. I just feel better about the depth and like the scroll down options at the running back position. So yeah, I like prioritizing the wide receivers up here at the top. Yeah,
I'm with you. And I know you had a note that maybe we should lower Kenny Walker a bit in our rankings because you can basically get a very similar projection in a guy like Chuba Hubbard multiple rounds later. So yeah, that's something I will be looking at at doing. I do really want to be above the field on Kenny Walker. I mean, I think it's such a great spot, but we might be a bit too high in our initial ranks here. Of course, if he falls to us at pick 9, and he did, pretty clearly the guy I want to take. Do you have anything else to say on that?
Yeah, no, I'm cool with it. Yeah, you can. A little awkward to get out of the first 2 rounds without like a wide receiver we want to be stacking, but that can give us the opportunity to do something a little bit different. So
yeah,
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think we can figure it out from there. So we can take Malik Neighbors here. And yeah, just showing off this best ball overlay tool again. Malik Neighbors, Kenny Walker. You can see I've drafted them on about 10% of my team so far. So that is probably a bit much. And like going forward, when I'm drafting tomorrow, that might be a combo that I would actually look to avoid, because you just don't want your teams looking too similar, assuming you're trying to avoid variance or limit your variance, I should say there. Coming up on the 304, I'll sort by ADP so we can see the top players available. I think we probably want to grab a tight end, and it looks like Kelsey's going to be our only option, and Kelsey just went. Should we start working on a stack potentially? We could look at Jordan Love. We could look at Purdy.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. So yeah, we can. Well, hard to stack Purdy with no Kittle.
Yeah, that's true.
Why don't we grab this Love or the Stroud? Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we can grab Reed, and then it's pretty easy to grab like Stroud, Tank Dell, which is a pretty strong game stack overall. Or obviously we could grab, a Jordan Love team here. But so far we got Kenny Walker, Malik Neighbors, Jaden Reed. These are a lot of players that I like. And I would say, because this is a larger field tournament, I'm really not sweating, a stack quite as much as I would be in smaller field stuff. Coming up on our next pick here, do you want to go best player available, considering we could pretty easily finish this stack out in the final 2 rounds?
Yeah, that makes sense to me, which BPA is going to be, can go with Tony Pollard. Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
I think that's fair, and then we can round it out with Jordan Love and a tight end. Really, really love Pollard this week. So yeah, we got Walker, Pollard, Malik Neighbors, Jaden Reed, and then I will queue up Jordan Love. And I do think, especially according to our rankings, Love is going a bit overdrafted, but things are extremely flat after, say, QB5. Like pretty much everyone QB5 to QB12 is pretty similar in our projection. So I wouldn't be sweating the rankings as much at quarterback as I might at, a few other positions. And then looking at tight end, I'll queue up Njoku, and he can be our priority for the 5th round. Ryan, we did get an interesting question, and I think, this is maybe something that's not necessarily intuitive. But someone asked, why would you want to double stack in a small field single entry more than larger multi-entry contests? That's because in these larger contests, you're going to see the winning score be a lot closer to like just the overall optimal team. Whereas in smaller contests, you can get away with a much lower score. So what we're targeting in smaller contests is just how do we limit the amount of things that we need to get right? And we can do that with a game stack. If you say you draft Jordan Love, Jaden Reed, and Christian Watson, which maybe isn't the best example because it's a little thin, but if Jordan Love goes off, those players catches touchdowns, that's really all you need to be in the conversation for first overall in that contest. Whereas in a larger field tournament, chances are Jordan Love, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson are not going to give you the score that you need to beat a truly optimal team, or one that's closer to truly optimal. Do you have anything to add there, Ryan?
No, you pretty much nailed it. This has been kind of your battle cry in all these small field stuff, and it's made me a lot of money. So
yeah, it's been going really well, and I will say that it was actually Spring Football DFS that really opened my eyes to this. I believe the username is BGRE Seth, who is one of the best DFS players in the world. He's dabbled in XFL, UFL DFS. And one thing that I noticed was that in large fields, he was, generally single stacking, generally, trying to get closer to like that optimal score, like I said. But in smaller fields, I mean, he was going crazy on game stacks. I was seeing QB plus 3 wide receivers in spring football smaller fields, which at least before he showed up, wasn't really something you were seeing much at all. So Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind. And, again, me and Ryan have both done the best overall, at least me personally, in these smaller field single entry tournaments because people aren't stacking and they certainly aren't double stacking as much as they should be. Looks like we should be able, this guy already has a quarterback. So we should be able to end here with a Jordan Love, Kenny Walker, Tony Pollard, Neighbors, Jaden Reed, David Njoku team. Not like the greatest build of all time, but certainly more than fine, I think, especially given the contest that we're in here.
It always, I feel so terrible about every team I draft this week that does not get a top 3 tight end, especially if you're drafting towards the back and you just get sniped on the last one. Yeah, it feels really, really terrible. Not that I would necessarily start taking a tight end in the second round, because those guys that are available on that 1-2 turn are genuinely above the tight ends for me, and above kind of everybody else. But yeah, especially in those, especially in the large field stuff, I just am sitting there and praying that I can get top 2 guys plus a tight end falling. And those are all the builds that I actually like.
Ryan, we just got into the $40 single entry 12-man tournament. Instantly. It is our lucky day. We do not have to wait on stream for our tournaments to fill. This is pure euphoria. I mean, there's nothing worse than clicking around trying to find a contest that will fill if you're, venturing outside of the Wildcat or the main battle royale. So yeah, Tuna 62584, you were asking what contest were we in previously. That was the $3 Wildcat. That's, again, if you're drafting a lot of teams, pretty much by far my favorite contest to draft a lot of teams. And I also think the $3 hurry up is pretty reasonable as well, but I prefer the slightly larger field, bigger top prize in the Wildcat. But yeah, so in this $40 12-man structure, I really want to prioritize stacking here. So Ryan, how do you want to handle this from the 104?
I think at the 104, you take whatever elite wide receiver that you want to get in a stack. I think, and yeah, feel free to disagree with me there, but I think even if Kyron or Saquon are available, that I'm fine just overlooking them and going to a Jamar Chase, an Amon-Ra, an AJ Brown, whichever particular direction you lean. Is Neighbors Danny Dimes stacks viable in 12-man? Probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
We could do that too.
We could do something like that. I think I prefer to prioritize either Chase or Amon-Ra. I'd probably give a slight lean to Amon-Ra because I think the game environment's so good. We talked about this a bit on caching points, but can Cleveland really push Cincinnati? I don't think so. I'm also not necessarily sure that it matters because the Bengals have been so pass heavy. And again, they're a very desperate team. They need to win probably 80% of their games to have a chance at making the playoffs at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't take their foot off the gas, but I really love the idea, especially in very small field 12-man tournament like this of just stacking this Detroit Minnesota game, and obviously we could prioritize the Detroit side if we're going to grab Amon-Ra here. We'll see what the guy in front of us does.
No, that's perfect to me. Right. And especially in these 12-mans too, there's so many. There's running backs we didn't even talk about at the top of the show that I think are semi-viable. Like I like HN and Cook more than them, but you can talk me into like Chase Brown this week. Maybe you can talk me into Jordan Mason. There's just so many ways to go at running back too that I think really in 12-man that wide receiver at the top is the way to go.
Yeah, I think that's really sharp. Another thing that I've noticed is especially when you get into the deeper rounds, these 12-mans can be really soft because now all of a sudden ADP is no longer a guide. ADP cuts off at pick 36. These go 72 picks deep. So I think, these 12-mans, I wish there were more 12-man tournaments. Unfortunately, the biggest one by far is the Dog Bowl. And I just have no interest in playing the Dog Bowl. But, whether it's the $3 12-man or the $40 single entry 12-man, those are tournaments that I really, really like. We are 14 picks away, so we could answer a couple questions. Somebody asked about Grant Calcaterra as a scroll down for tight end. Feels a bit thin to me. I think totally viable in 12-mans, especially if you grabbed a Hurts, AJB, and you just needed someone at the very end. What do you think about that, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of ran all the routes without Goddard. I have no conviction like in the player or the talent though. So yeah, agreed. It's probably a 12-man only thing.
Yeah, our projection isn't particularly strong on him. We are a bit low compared to the industry, so you could argue maybe we're just a bit off there. But I know our boy Chris Wecht is who handles our projections. He is a big time Eagles fan, and he's a bit down on Calcaterra's overall involvement in this game. But yeah, certainly viable in 12-man formats. We also had a start sit question here. Oh, we got a couple. Always appreciate the questions, guys. By the way, it's especially in a 12-man draft, it can be a bit hard to fill all the time. As interesting as me and Ryan may seem, sometimes we struggle for things to say. So in PPR, am I insane for wanting to start Demario Douglas over Brandon Ayuk? Worried about Ayuk over the Chiefs. Ryan, what do you think about that?
Oh man. Okay, so I don't think you're insane. So this is one of those spots where I can totally talk myself like all the way down the river on the schematic stuff. So Demario Douglas earlier this week, Drake May legitimately came out and said, "Yeah, Douglas is my go-to guy against man coverage." The Jags run that at a top 5 rate. There was one crazy stat out there earlier this week where Douglas on catchable targets against man coverage was like 11 for 11 for 100 something yards and a touchdown like this season. So yeah, I could certainly see it. Ayuk, obviously the Chiefs are very much like a slot and an inside funnel. So Ayuk doesn't project all that well for us. I'm not excited about the schematic stuff. I don't know. I might need to pull up the projections and see exactly how far we have them off, but I don't think you're crazy for asking the question. But I am going to filibuster for a minute while I look and see where we actually landed on the two of them.
Yeah, I would lean a bit more toward Ayuk there. I will say I don't have as much time as I wish I did to watch film, but I did watch every Drake May drop back last week. And, I'm consistently impressed with Demario Douglas's ability to separate against man coverage. I know our stats show that as well as Ryan sort of outlined. So, I don't think it's an insane question to ask. I do think it's a pretty poor schematic matchup overall for Brandon Ayuk, if I'm not mistaken, Ryan, but I would generally just lean towards the highest projected player. And, when it comes to start sits, that's almost always what you're going to look at. These head-to-head matchups, start sits, it's largely been solved. You just want to play the highest projected team you possibly can. And fantasy points, we have through 6 weeks, the most accurate projections in the industry. So I would highly, highly recommend checking those out for any sort of start sit questions. But obviously me and Ryan are more than happy to give our opinions for whatever they're worth. Before we get to any additional comments or questions, Ryan, we're coming up on pick 21 and I am praying for George Kittle here. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I think it's pretty simply just George Kittle. Yeah.
All right.
To follow up, I did pull up the projections. We are 3.2 points higher on Ayuk than Douglas in PPR. So yeah, at that point, I'm not arguing with the projections there with schematic stuff at all. That's kind of if it's within a point, maybe I know ball a question like that. But yeah, I think you pretty clearly play Ayuk. The Chiefs as you were asking, Jake, while it is in theory a tough schematic matchup with all the too high the Chiefs play, they did play a lot of man coverage in the Super Bowl to try to limit Deebo Samuel. Did Kittle go? We have to actually talk about our picks.
So I honestly, what I want to do here is I want to grab Aaron Jones and then come back for Goff. I'm trying to think, what is the ADP gap? So Jones is 34. What is Jameson? 35.2. I think we just go Jones here, and then we hope these other guys come back to us. We can land the full game stack. I was really, really hoping to get Kittle. I mean, if we got Kittle and then like Aaron Jones, J-Mo Goff, oh my God. I mean, that would be like the greatest team for this format I could possibly imagine. But alas. All right, 6 picks away. We could probably get to one other one. Somebody asked, thin at running back bench PPR, drop backup QB Kyler Murray. He has Jaden Daniels to stash Kamani Vidal. Nobody will take Kyler in a trade. What do you think, Ryan?
I mean, I'd want to know who's on the waiver wire for quarterbacks, I guess. And also,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think about it in terms of like, oh, am I making a team better by dropping Kyler Murray? I think that's overall not that big of a deal. I think I'd just more think about is Vidal being on the end of your bench the guy that can make a big difference in your season? I don't know if I'm convinced of that. I don't think we're gonna see ever like a bell cow Kimani Vidal. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I didn't draft enough best ball teams, and that's the reason I don't believe that. But yeah, I don't think you need to drop Kyler for Vidal. If there was somebody more enticing, I would say yes. But I think I'd almost just rather have the upside of Kyler there on my bench if something happens to Daniels than a Vidal. I don't know. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to me, it really would just depend on what other quarterbacks are available on your waiver wire. Because if you can get, a comparable, fantasy point per game play to Kyler Murray on the waiver wire, then I really don't mind the drop here. Before I finish that thought, Ryan, JMO here, right? I mean, there's no one else I'm super interested in.
Yeah, I think so. Show me tight end, I guess. I don't know. Is Njoku even going? But yeah.
I think I'm fine. Just we can figure it out. I mean, I'm good with Kraft. I'm good with Schultz. I'm good with Parkinson. So I think we'll be okay here. And because we got basically every relevant Lions wide receiver, we have slightly increased our chances to grab a guy like Jared Goff. But yeah, just to put a bow on that question, it would just really come down to how deep your waiver wire is at quarterback. Generally in 1 QB leagues, like especially if you're in like a 10, maybe 12 team league, it is pretty deep. And, I don't know if you want to waste an extra bench spot on a quarterback when, like a guy like Vidal would be higher upside. Hilo has pointed this out on Cashing Points over and over again, but the way Arizona has designed their pass game is just quite poor. Their ground game is, generally pretty efficient and exciting, but yeah, the pass game, Kyler's obviously a generational athlete. He's, it's basically him and Doug Flutie when you look at quarterbacks like 5'10" who have been successful. But yeah, he really does have to overcome, a decent bit when it comes to like pass game concepts and all that. So I'm not super optimistic on Kyler's rest of season outlook, even though I absolutely love the player there. Someone said likely to rain in London in regards to the Demario Douglas question. Actually, when I was checking weather earlier, the London game is the only game with any weather concerns. Things are looking pretty great across the board. So shout out to the United States for awesome weather this week. Let's see, Achane or Brian Robinson PPR. That's a tricky one. Man, I don't know. I guess I would say probably, well, let me look at our projections before I say anything. Do you have a take on that, Ryan?
I feel pretty strongly about Achane.
Okay.
I don't know.
Right.
I think Brian Robinson, he's supposed to play, but he didn't play the entire second half 2 weeks ago with this injury. I think it's very easy. Something just flares up or they get way out ahead and he stops playing as well. Because again, it's an 8-point spread. So yeah, and as we all know, Achane has that insane upside. I feel better about the game environment. Maybe like a Mike McDaniel statement game. Yeah, I'm into Achane there.
Yeah. I think I would be. I would certainly be with you there. You can't really argue that either player has a stronger matchup because they both have like the best possible matchups against Carolina and Indianapolis. And we know Achane has the upside. He should, at least in theory, be healthier than B-Rob coming off of, Achane's coming off the concussion. So that Edwin Porras generally doesn't. Has noted, Dr. Edwin Porras, who works for Fantasy Points, has noted that concussions generally don't lead to any sort of reduction in a player's fantasy output the following week, whether it's quarterback, wide receiver, running back. I believe it's the most impactful for quarterback, but certainly running back and wide receiver not really something to worry about. Ryan, we might have a big decision point coming up here between Jared Goff and David Njoku if he's available. I feel pretty strongly about Njoku at tight end. But I also if someone else took Goff, I would we might have to end the stream. I'm going to be really upset.
Yeah, man. The team's dead if you
Okay.
don't get Goff. So yeah, I think you just take him.
All right.
I don't know. Well, how many more picks are between who's taking QBs? How far would it be?
We would be
over on the board?
Okay, so it would only be a 6-pick gap.
Okay.
No one in there has taken a quarterback. Has anyone in here taken Laporta? No one has a tight end. So I don't know. It feels kind of like we're pushing it. I mean, Njoku could still come back to us, but since no one else has a tight end, okay. So this guy took Laporta. He's not picking before us.
Do you believe in the rational underdog drafter, Jake?
I do not.
It's a question I ask myself.
I have seen some crazy stuff happen in these drafts. So honestly, I think I'd rather just I'd rather sacrifice 1.5 points on tight end than risk that someone else takes Goff. I mean, if we let's sort by ADP and look at just quarterback. I mean, we still have Love, still have Burrow, still have Stroud, all on the board. Mahomes on the board, Cousins on the board, Geno on the board. Ooh, I don't know.
You could always save this with like Naked Richardson too. Potentially. I lean Njoku, but you can do what you want.
All right. No, I'll risk it. And we can get to a couple questions while I anxiously wait to see if Goff comes back to us. But yeah, really like the start to this team, assuming we can round things out with Jared Goff here. Yeah, so coming back to the dropping Kyler Murray question, he said Geno, Trevor, Stafford, Goff, May, all on the wire. I mean, Goff and Geno can get you pretty close to the production that I sort of expect from Kyler rest of season. So I'm not. I'd probably lean towards picking up what was it, Vidal there. Yeah, somebody said if you can get a piece of that Cleveland passing offense, you have to do it. Exactly right. The Cleveland passing offense hasn't let us down this year. Someone asked, what is our favorite game to stack and which QB do you like to draft naked? Jaden Daniels, I think, would be probably the ultimate guy that you could draft naked just because he projects so well. Jalen Hurts, I mean, sure, he can run, but I really do want A.J. Brown in those lineups. I think after Jaden Daniels, you're probably looking at AR as the next best naked QB. I mean, I get that AR can score 8 fantasy points in 55 plays, but he had a game in week 1 where he scored 27 fantasy points in 45 plays. So, the variance with AR is massive, which makes him pretty great for tournaments and infuriating for something like redraft. Josh Allen is fine too. We're just a bit down on Josh Allen relative to market. If you compare our projections, whether it's attempts, completions, passing yards to the betting market, I think every single week this season, we have been on Josh Allen unders, and I've bet them every single week, and I can only remember one of them losing. So we've been pretty sharp on the idea that the Bills just don't want to pass. They want to be a more run heavy team, and that has killed a bit of Josh Allen's upside. But I do think he's fine if you wanted to grab a naked QB, and the offense is so spread out that multiple rushing touchdowns. It's certainly there. Ryan, we have been smiled upon on this lovely day. It looks like we are going to get Jared Goff, so we'll probably be looking at best player available for our final pick here. But this is shaping up to be a really great team, and basically the exact kind of team that I want to draft for this format. Again, this is the $40 12-man draft single entry tournament, only 108 entries. We've got Aaron Jones, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, and David Njoku. These are some of my favorite pieces from this game. Really, really, really like this team. Let's see. Someone asked, what would you consider small field? It's a bit different for NFL DFS compared to like Battle Royale. Like NFL DFS, I'd call a small field anything sub like 5K entries. For Battle Royale, because just the contests in general are smaller, I'd call anything maybe sub 1,500 small field, even sub 2,000. I think is relatively small field. This contest in particular, I mean, this is like basically the smallest contest you will find on Underdog with only 108 entries. Anything to add to that, Ryan?
Yeah, no, that I don't think super differently about a contest like this versus even up to 1,500 or 2,000 entries.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's very binary for me in Battle Royale. It's either just because of how the contests are spaced, but yeah, basically the main BR or the Wildcat, or I treat more large field. Pretty much everything else, I'm just ratcheting up the correlation a lot.
Yeah, certainly think that makes sense. This is probably going to be a pretty tricky best player available because things are so thin at wide receiver and running back. I mean, obviously, like if Chase Brown made it back to us, that would be awesome. Devontae Adams, I think, would be really, really great too. It's weird that they're Sunday Night Football, aren't they? It's kind of weird that he's even displaying. I don't believe Sunday Night Football is included on the UD main slate.
Yeah, no, he must have ended up in our ranking sheet somehow.
Oh, okay. Well, I will certainly adjust that. I can't imagine Underdog will let you.
Or no, he has an ADP.
Oh, huh.
You know what? It's because he went in as being.
Oh, that's right. So he'll zero for you. I think if you draft him on the slate. All right. Well, we will get Devontae Adams out of our ranking if he is currently in there. To me, it's pretty much just Chase Brown or bust. I mean, I'm really not seeing a lot of other options that I like here.
I don't know. It's like the
Noah Brown honestly isn't bad. I'll pull up our projections and make sure I don't mess this up. But I love the team. I feel like as long as we just get an okay projected player for our final pick, we'll be in good shape here. Because I mean, we got Njoku, Jamo, Amon-Ra, Aaron Jones, Jared Goff. I mean, yeah, this is a really, really great stack for a 12-man.
I'll answer a couple other questions from the chat while you're pulling up those projections. Would you start Xavier Legette or Tyrone Tracy? Legette has a great matchup and Deontay is questionable. Singletary's back. Tyrone has been doing super well. I would go Legette. I think right now we have pretty close to an even split that favors Tracy a little bit in our projections, and I think that's obviously these types of situations are hard to project, but I think that's kind of the best you can do. So yeah, I'd be going Legette there. Hold Philly defense versus New York Giants, or drop to grab great Minnesota defense versus a tough Detroit team. Great schedule coming up. This might just be philosophical. In redraft, until it's literally the playoffs, I don't care about how a defense looks after the current week. So yeah, I'm just keeping Philadelphia and playing them this week. I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's putting too much stock into our confidence in projecting defenses. But yeah, I would just stick with Philly. If you really want to get Minnesota, you bid $1 on them next week or whatever. Let's see. Any other questions? Oh, you all think Tracy and Singletary is going to be a 50-50 split? Pretty much. Yeah, that's more or less what I would assume.
Ryan, we are on the clock here. Projections say Wandale, which I don't feel good about, but he won't kill us. You know, he's pretty much a lock for 5 targets. Legette is also an option. We could go a bit more upside with a guy like Watson. Grab Tracy or Mostert. What do you think?
Yeah, this is disgusting.
This is
Juju, maybe. I'm not like a Juju believer or whatever that he's like in the role.
We ended up taking Xavier.
Okay. Oh, I didn't realize we didn't have the time. Sorry, I thought I had.
No. You're good. I mean, I think he was the right pick. We have Juju projected for 7.9 UD right now. Xavier Legette for 8.6, and I mean, Deontay Johnson looks legit questionable. If he sat, Legette would jump multiple rounds in like a 12-team format. So I do think that's okay. It's tough to know sort of what to do there when the board looks so gross. I also wouldn't have minded a guy like Noah Brown as a pick. It is really tough to know, how to handle that. Do you just grab the best player available in terms of raw projection? Do you look for a guy like Wandale who will get you 7 underdog points, but has basically no chance at getting you 15 plus? That is a bit of a tricky situation. But again, kind of like I mentioned, this is such a good team for the format that I'm not really sweating the last pick in particular. What we're really hoping for is that Deontay Johnson sits for Carolina, but this is a really, really great team for a $40 single entry, 108 person tournament. Jared Goff, Aaron Jones, Amon-Ra, J-Mo, Xavier Legette, David Njoku. Feel pretty good about that squad. Let's see what else we can find here. Maybe we can get into one of these $25 5 max tournaments. I really like the $25 5 max, the fullback dive. We'll see if any of these are close to filling, and if not, we can hop into a wildcat. Oh, Ryan, we are keeping the luck streak alive. This is incredible. If this is your guys' first time tuning in, you don't know the pain that we felt jumping in and out of tournaments, me frantically clicking on live streams while Ryan tries to answer some questions and fill the airtime. We got Fantasy Dog Pound in here. He's one of the guys behind the Best Ball overlay tool that you can see on our screen. Really good guy. Not a fan of Pittman in a 12-man. Yeah, I think it's pretty iffy in a 12-man with Pittman. AR has just been so erratic at quarterback. We have Josh Downs projected for a slightly higher target share there. Yeah, pretty much. Actually, we have Xavier Legette with a higher projection than Pittman, and that's with Deontay Johnson in. So, I wasn't in love with the Legette pick, but the more that I think about it, the more I think like we're Deontay Johnson getting ruled out away from having probably the best team in the entire field in that $40 tournament. Someone asked Slayton, Allen Lazard, or Ray McLeod. Oh man, that's a tricky one. Do you have a take on that, Ryan?
We're weighing tertiary options in 3 offenses. Probably just going to go with the offense I think is going to put up the most points, which is going to be McLeod. So
yeah, I think
that one's fairly easy to me. Yeah.
A good way of looking at it. Someone asked how many of the fullback dives will I do? I'll generally do between 3 and 5 of the fullback dives. It is one of my favorite tournaments. It's a 5 max, so if you just want to do one, that's totally fine. You really don't need to. In DFS, my general advice is to push towards maxing most of the tournaments that you play. I think in Battle Royale you can certainly get away with not maxing, especially given the time it takes to draft. Ryan, pretty common decision point for us here. Kenny Walker, one of these great wide receivers.
We did a neighbors team earlier. We did an Amon-Ra team. Could do a Brown or a Chase team.
All right, let's grab Brown since he's going a little higher, and maybe we could get both guys, and then that'll give us some good flexibility at quarterback as we get a little deeper into the draft. But yeah, this has been a really fun stream. I think the big thing with underdog tournaments isn't necessarily like how many entries do you want to submit. It's how are you building your teams relative to contest size. And, again, like I've harped on pretty much every stream, amp up your correlation in small fields, dial it back a little bit in larger fields. You can still double stack in a big field. I think that's okay. But just keep in mind that you will need to be closer to the overall optimal score in a larger field than you would a smaller field. I think I want to go Jamar here. But we could go neighbors, could go Amon-Ra.
I'm fine, Jamar.
Right.
In this drafting towards the back, I just want to make sure I'm getting different combinations. If you're only drafting like 10 or 20 teams, I just want to make sure I'm getting different combinations. Because I like all of these guys and how they project kind of in the top 9 picks or so. So I just want to make sure my whole portfolio is giving me a lot of opportunities to win.
Yeah, exactly. When you end up with like very similar builds over and over again, you kind of need a very narrow path to really get any of your teams near the top. But if you're a bit more spread out, you have a lot of outs. And one of the reasons I do really love the best ball overlay tool is because I can simply click on AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, and I can see, I actually have not drafted that pair together yet. So we love these top 5 wide receivers, and now I've got a pretty unique pairing, at least when it comes to my overall builds. I'll sort by ADP here. I think we're pretty clearly going tight end, assuming one of them falls to us, right?
Yes, please. Yeah, we opened the stream by saying we want a top 3 tight end on every team, and we haven't gotten a team with any of those 3 yet. So, all right,
well,
we finally did it.
We lucked out here. So Hilo had some interesting stuff to say on George Kittle. I'm probably going to run the clock out just because I want to get this out. I think it's pretty interesting. It's an amazing schedule adjusted matchup for George Kittle. Jawan Jennings is also out. Jawan Jennings is really the only player who's been competitive with Kittle in terms of short area target share. The only problem is Kansas City brings a lot of pressure. And generally when San Francisco plays teams that bring a lot of pressure, they keep Kittle in to block a bit more. So that's kind of my only concern with Kittle, but I do still love him as a play. I think, to me, it's really tough to separate the tight ends. I think Brock Bowers is pretty clearly my favorite of the 3, but again, it's very close. And then Kelsey and Kittle are pretty much the same in my mind. Do you have any other takes on that?
Yeah, that's about where I would be as well. It's a positive matchup I have positive matchup notes kind of on all these guys. But yeah, Kelsey, the 49ers are also a little bit of like a slot middle of the field type of funnel. Obviously the Kansas City offense is also a tight end funnel. Certainly the opposite of like a wide receiver funnel
here.
So personally, I'd be going Mixon because I'm getting a lot of Hubbard and a lot of drafts of my own. And Mixon, I think we're a little closer to to the consensus ADP on. So when Mixon's there, I'm just taking him for exposure reasons. I think both are good plays.
All right. Yeah, I think that's solid. So far we got Joe Mixon, AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, George Kittle. I think we pretty clearly want to make this a Joe Burrow stack. So I will queue him up. Big fan of Burrow this week. Like I said, it's a strong schematic matchup against a Cleveland team that runs a lot of single high. Joe Burrow has shredded single high. The main concern is, will Cleveland show up? I'm not fully convinced that matters for a Cincinnati team that, again, is in full desperation mode, cannot afford to let their foot off the gas. And they're, second among all teams behind only Seattle in pass rate over expectations. So Joe Burrow should get the dropbacks here. I guess the real question is, do we want to grab a second running back or do we want to make it a Burrow double with T. Higgins?
That's actually tricky because I do really like the running back options on this slate.
Yeah, but this is a smaller field. I think in like a wildcat type format, I'd probably just lean towards grabbing a good scroll down running back and Burrow. In this, I'm a bit more tempted by Higgins. Do you want to tie break for me?
Yeah, no, I hear you there. Yeah, I was just about to, because I never pay attention to which contest you click on, so I always have to ask, hey, are we in small field or large field? But yeah, no, that would tie break it for me.
That's because you're answering all the people's questions while I click around and figure out what can fill. But we've been very lucky this week getting into contests that insta fill. So yeah, we can take Joe Burrow here and then we can round it out with a T. Higgins team. Really like the double stack. Again, maybe you need Cleveland to show up a little bit, but maybe you don't. Maybe Joe Burrow still gets 40 dropbacks even in a blowout script, and he could absolutely be hyper efficient to both of his star wide receivers here.
There's also like a scenario where there's just multiple short fields and turnovers out of Deshaun Watson too.
Yeah.
And it's just like some very quick, very cheap touchdown passes to a Chase, to a Higgins. I don't know. I think the Bengals can break the slate in the first half, right?
Yeah.
In a scenario like that, I don't know. Even if Chase Brown gets the ball 20 times in the second half, then I think you can still be fine.
Yeah, Chase Brown is another guy that I think you could mix into Burrow stacks. I certainly wouldn't do like Burrow, Higgins, Chase, and Chase Brown. I don't think that makes sense. I don't really ever want to triple stack in this kind of format. But a Burrow, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, or Burrow, Chase Brown, T. Higgins, I certainly think is viable. Probably more so in like 12 mans, but totally fine for sixes. That team ended up being Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, AJ Brown, George Kittle team. That's a team that I like quite a bit, again, especially for a smaller field contest like the fullback dive. Ryan, we can draft one more Wildcat team and then get out of here. So if anybody has any final questions while we wrap up here, feel free to drop them in the chat. Really appreciate all the questions, all the interactions, guys. We've been pushing. We've been pushing Scott Barrett, our great CEO, for maybe a bit more Battle Royale content, a bit more Battle Royale exposure, and obviously we need good engagement on streams like this in order to justify that. So again, really appreciate everybody interacting, and be sure to hop in the Fantasy Points Discord if you want to grab our rankings, which are really just a blend of our projections and ADP. I think they could be really helpful to identify quick values while you're drafting, as you can see on the screen. So yeah, certainly be sure to check out the Fantasy Points Discord. Someone said, I noticed you took Burrow first instead of T. Higgins, but the guy picking after you already had a QB. Oh yeah, that was probably just a mental error on my part. If the guys in between you and your upcoming pick already have a quarterback, and you're looking at drafting quarterback, you can just simply wait. Generally, I'm a bit better about that on stream, but sometimes it gets past me. Thankfully, it did not bite us in this instance, Ryan. But yeah, that's good advice. Always pay attention to the other players around you and who they have taken when you're debating between should I take a quarterback or a wide receiver, whatever. We drew the 106 here, Ryan.
Do you want to do something crazy?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know it.
Can we do a Darnold stack with no Justin Jefferson?
Oh, so are we just doing Addison as our Darnold play? We could do a Mon-Ra, right? And then
we can go Amon-Ra. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably always better to just do a Goff stack in that scenario, but yeah, I don't know. I know I'm gonna have a lot of Darnold plus Jefferson teams, so I kind of want to think of ways to get to be different on that game.
Yeah, I'm not eager to take Darnold on like every Jefferson team by any means, but I don't know, maybe 40% of my Jefferson teams are going to end up as Darnold stacks. I mean, Darnold is a really, really great play relative to ADP overall. So he's a guy I certainly like. Should we round this out with we could grab Kenny Walker, or do you want to go like neighbors here?
Well, was that a meme, or if we're doing the Darnold thing, then we need to keep a wide receiver slot open.
That is probably true. But yeah, probably don't want to go 3 wide receivers. Yeah, let's go Walker. We can grab our second running back later in the game. Oh, you know what we could do is we could grab Darnold, Aaron Jones, Addison.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I was about. That's what I was going to sell you on next.
I'm man. Darnold. So Aaron Jones, like I said earlier in the show, 18% target share in his healthy games. That is behind only Alvin Kamara over the full season. My take on this was that, if we assume he plays, maybe they take a few of like the meaningless carries outside of the red zone away from him and give those to Ty Chandler. But I think Aaron Jones is clearly a better receiver than Ty Chandler. So he's still going to get, the high value work inside the red zone and the receiving work, was sort of my take on his hamstring injury. And it's weird how they've handled that injury, because initially it was reported as a hip, and then next thing you know, it's listed on the practice report as a hamstring. So, it's not one that I'm super worried about. I do think he'll play this week.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And yeah, he's just been so good in the receiving game. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Lions just don't do the ridiculous man coverage cover one thing that we think they're gonna do, and it becomes more of like a underneath to Addison, or maybe Jefferson just has all this coverage on him the entire game. Yeah, I don't know. There's ways that can get there. So I'm pretty interested in it. If you had to drop one, Tracy or Pop Douglas, I think pretty clearly Pop Douglas. I'm just always in redraft, if it's a running back that I think can take over the full backfield at some point in the season, I'll drop anybody else besides that player. That's the most valuable archetype in redraft to me.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, Scott Barrett has talked about this at length, and like upside wins championships and all that, but Tracy has multiple outs, right? Like he could just straight up be better than Singletary and slowly emerge as their clear RB1, maybe eventually, become their bell cow, even if Singletary stays healthy. And obviously if Singletary goes down, Tyrone Tracy is going to be a really great pick. We got sniped on tight end, which does really suck. Do we want to start our stack, or should we just grab Njoku and then get after the stack here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just take Njoku. He's the tight end we clearly like the most, and the rest of our stack is not going to be contested at all by ADP most likely. So yeah, I think you almost just go Njoku. We might have to take Darnold early to make sure the Jefferson team doesn't take him.
I guess that is possible. I mean, it would be a round 5 thing, I think. Because we don't have any Minnesota players yet. Like if we take Aaron Jones here and Darnold gets sniped, we can take Goff and be okay.
That's true as well. Yeah, good call.
So I don't think I want to take Darnold here. We're gonna go Aaron Jones. So far we've got a Kenny Walker, Aaron Jones, Amon-Ra, Njoku build. Certainly a bit of a reach on Njoku. So maybe you could have argued that we could have gone Aaron Jones and Addison, but that does leave us a bit more vulnerable to getting sniped on Darnold. So I think I'm totally okay with the Njoku, Aaron Jones build. Again, I think it's important to note that in these battle royale formats, ADP is far from gospel. ADP is not particularly accurate in terms of evaluating how good of a play guys are. I prefer to lean in on our projections relative to ADP. And, oftentimes you can find guys, we highlighted this with Kenny Walker and Chuba Hubbard. Kenny Walker's got an ADP of 9. We love him. I think he's a fantastic play, even relative to ADP. Chuba Hubbard in our stuff has the same projection as Kenny Walker. His ADP is 21.6. So you can find some really great scroll down options. And I think, whether it's the rankings that we drop in Discord or just looking at, fantasypoints.com or half PPR projections, it can be pretty easy to identify values in that regard. So I really wouldn't stress too much about, reaching, especially if it's to complete your stack in some of these tournaments here.
Yeah, and I mean the thing with Njoku there is both of us us and our projections both clearly like Njoku as the tight end 4. Yeah, he's the tight end 6 by ADP. You're not guaranteed to get him at the final turn, right? It's 12 picks between this pick and our next one. Instead you're gonna reach for Addison or Darnold, who are just as big of reaches by ADP. Yeah, I don't know. If you're doing a weird build like this, you're gonna have to quote unquote reach. But that's why it's a weird build. That's why it's going to be unique. So I'm into it.
Exactly. We're getting ideally a low owned Darnold, and really all we need on this team is for Addison and Aaron Jones to soak up a decent chunk of the fantasy workload here, and we need Amon-Ra to outscore Justin Jefferson. If those things happen and this game pops off, then we should be in pretty good shape here in the Wildcat, which again is pretty easily my favorite tournament if you want to play, something large field. I think, the lower buy-in makes it easier to fire more entries. And the payout structure is just really, really great. It's very forgiving. You finish top 1%, you're going to get a good payout pretty much no matter what. There's nothing more frustrating in DFS or, BR isn't quite as bad. I think DFS, you'll see some really egregious contests like the Millie Maker where you could have a top 0.01% finish and you only 4 or 5x your money. That's no fun. So yeah, the Wildcat, certainly a great contest. Ryan, I think as long as this guy doesn't take Sam Darnold, we should end up with the team we want here. Yeah, so Jordan Addison, I will queue up our boy Darnold. Wow, he's jumped to QB7, so he has moved up a bit. I imagine people are seeing projections and are like, oh, wow, Sam Darnold is actually a pretty comparable play to every quarterback on this slate not named Jaden Daniels.
Yep, which only makes it more important, in my opinion, to find ways to get weird with him. So yeah, if I we didn't get a 101 tonight, but if I'm getting Jefferson at the 101 and I'm doing a Darnold stack, I'm pretty much just using Jameson Williams as the bring back. If I'm bringing back either that or I'm doing like multiple scroll down reaches at the running back position, especially because while the Darnold ADP is outside the top 6, it looks low. I do think it's going to become more and more popular as just over the next 24 hours. Because the entire industry is kind of on the Sam Darnold stuff. It's not just us and our projections. It's kind of everybody's and everybody doing content kind of sees this for what it is. I think so.
I wish it was
find
just
ways
us,
to get
man.
unique.
Yeah, that'd be pretty nice if it was just us. But we're gonna end up with a Darnold, Kenny Walker, Aaron Jones, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jordan Addison, David Njoku build. Again, another team that I really, really like, a unique Darnold build here. Before I let us go, I'll leave you guys with one crazy stat. If you exclude Darnold's league worst matchup against the New York Jets, where he, just wasn't particularly efficient, he's behind only Lamar Jackson in fantasy points per dropback. That is insane and incredibly rare for, more of a pocket passer like Darnold. We can wrap this up with a final question. Someone got offered Achane and Kyler for Jonathan Taylor. I have Geno Smith and Goff at QB, lost Tua and Fields. I would assume this is Superflex, Mr. Big Mac Brad. Otherwise, I'm not exactly sure why you're keeping so many quarterbacks on your bench.
I think either way, whether it's, unless I'm reading this question wrong, I think whether it's Superflex or 1 QB, I'm just taking Achane and Kyler pretty much every time.
Yeah, I mean, Tua is going to come back eventually, or at least we expect Tua to come back.
Could be as early as week 8, week 9, right?
It's
only 1 or 2 more weeks before he's likely back.
And once,
HN has had it, obviously kind of been a lot of weird stuff going on in the backfield with injuries, but we have seen HN have a huge workload in some small samples in the first game on the first couple drives last week. So yeah, I think the HN is a guy in if I had the time to go aggressively offer trades in all my redraft leagues, I would be sending out offers for HN anywhere I don't have him right now.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. I mean, we know the workload has been awesome. The upside is obviously incredible. I can't imagine he's going to sustain 3.3 yards per carry for much longer, Ryan. I think he'll be, at least when Tua comes back, a little bit closer to the 6.5 yards per carry version of himself that he was previously. But, thank you so much, guys, for watching the Underdog Drafter Party, the Week 7 edition. This was a great show. We really appreciate all the chat interactions here. Tuna, we already noted that we do like James Cook here. Brian Robinson, I'm a bit more iffy about. Jordan Mason has an absolutely terrible matchup, and he is hurt with the AC joint, so I'd expect him to take some carries from Mason, give them to either Garendo, Deebo Samuel, so Patrick Taylor, what have you. But yeah, again, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Week 7 edition of the Underdog Drafter Party. Be sure to check out the Fantasy Points Discord, the Underdog Battle Royale channel. We will drop our rankings in there Saturday at noon. And yeah, I will see you guys at the top of the leaderboards. What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.